This is Heather, and it's my Wednesday check-in. And this Wednesday, as you probably know, is a little bit unusual because it was Inauguration Day in the US. And so I turned on the TV at lunch hour and sat down and watched pretty much the whole thing. Got to listen to some pretty good speaking and a benediction that, as a friend of mine said, was spoken by a preacher who couldn't quite tell the difference between a benediction and a sermon. Things to watch myself when I get speaking. But I was struck in the whole piece. And if you haven't seen it, I really recommend you go look it up. The last speaker, other than the benediction in the inaugural ceremony, was a 22-year-old Black woman from the US by the name of Amanda Gorham. She is the poet laureate, the youth poet laureate of the United States, a position that may not even have existed before. And she was asked to come up with a poem that would sum up Biden's inauguration, which she said was a pretty awesome responsibility, especially since she, like Biden, grew up with a speech impediment. So speaking to the nation over the TV was a truly daunting task. And I was just reading on the internet that she's been working on this poem for a while, feeling that she wasn't up to the task because there were how do you sum up the state that the U.S. is in and the U.S. democracy is in, to speak to a nation with words of hope and challenge. And she was watching TV on the 6th of January when the Capitol protesters got inside the building and did some damage. And that was the night that she stayed up all night and was able to finish the piece that she was writing. The image that stuck with me was her closing lines, where she said, "There is always light if you have the courage to see it, if you have the courage to be it." And when I put that together with another image from earlier in the poem where she says, "Our democracy is not broken, but unfinished," it just spoke to me so much of the themes that I hear running through our faith. The idea that there's no such thing as perfection. What there is journey. And that's an overused word, but what it really means to me is we're never finished. We're always moving forward. We believe that it's possible to get from one place to another and become better in the process. So that's the first part, the idea that we're not finished and our current state is not the ending because there's always another chapter to be written and it can be better. But when she says, if you have the courage to be it, that's the one that really left me almost in tears, because it's not that everything gets better just because it magically does or because someone comes along and fixes it for you. It's that if you want there to be more light in the world, you're the one who has to learn how to shine. And I'm thinking about that now. I'm not even quite sure what to tell you about it because it's a new thought. Not a new thought, but a new way of putting that thought. And I was just so inspired to hear the many different words of hope at a time that has been very difficult for the United States and much of the rest of the world. So I'm still thinking on it, but the one thing I am thinking about is the more that I and you and all of our neighbors and our community together can find a way to be the change that we want to see in the world. The more that we take up that mantle and move forward with the intent to make changes for the best, to make changes that we believe are the right changes to be made. And the more people of goodwill that do that, the more likely this world really is to change. This young woman, she quoted from Hamilton twice. A word I heard this was that she tweeted after the inauguration ceremony was over and said, "I quoted twice from Hamilton, and did anyone notice?" And of course, the writer of Hamilton, Manuel Miranda, came up and said, "I did." I also heard some quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. There were quotes and thoughts from Abraham Lincoln. That poem was rooted in some of the best hopes that the U.S. has for itself. And it would just thrill me to see that nation return to hopefulness instead of hopelessness. And yeah, I'm hoping there's a little light shining where you are. I'm hoping you can find it within yourself to be a little bit of that light for the rest of us. In the season of light, Epiphany, let's go out and shine. Heather out.